What kind of treasure can fit in the palm of a hand and yet change the fate of an entire empire? Crafted from gold, precious stones, and enamel, the Fabergé eggs were not just ornaments. They were messages, hiding love, ambition, and the final dreams of a dying empire. How did a simple Easter tradition turn into one of the most mysterious legacies of the Romanovs? And why, more than a century later, do these tiny masterpieces still stir hearts more deeply than any treasure? Today, I will tell you about the most famous Fabergé eggs and about the secrets they still hold. Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. The story of the imperial Fabergé eggs began not in the jeweler's workshop, but much earlier, with a tragedy and a deathbed vow. The heir to the Russian throne, Tsarevich Nicholas Alexandrovich, was engaged to the young Danish princess Dagmar. Their union promised not only personal happiness, but also an important political alliance between two monarchies. Nicholas loved his fiancée deeply, and she returned his feelings, but fate had other plans. A severe illness cut the heir's life short. Before his death, Nicholas asked his younger brother, Grand Duke Alexander, to fulfill his last wish, to take care of Dagmar. Alexander honored this request. He became engaged to the Danish princess, taking upon himself not only a responsibility to the dynasty, but also an invisible debt to his brother. For Alexander, this decision was not easy. He had once loved another. But duty to his family and the memory of his brother outweighed his personal feelings. Thus, Princess Dagmar, after converting to Orthodoxy and taking the name Maria Feodorovna, became the wife of the future Emperor Alexander III. At first glance, their marriage seemed dictated by circumstance. But over time, duty gave way to deep affection. Alexander III and Maria Feodorovna became one of the most harmonious couples in the history of the Russian monarchy. Their relationship was filled with respect, support, and genuine devotion. Alexander, a stern and strict ruler, allowed himself to be warm and caring by his wife's side. He made every effort to surround Maria Feodorovna with comfort and joy, especially during those times when state affairs drained his strength. One of the most touching signs of his love was a very special Easter gift in 1885. Alexander wanted to surprise his wife with something not just valuable, but filled with meaning and symbolism. He turned to the jeweler Carl Fabergé, a young master who had already made a name for himself with his works for the imperial court. Fabergé created something that forever changed the perception of jewelry art, a seemingly simple snow-white enameled egg. Inside was a matte gold yolk, which opened to reveal a tiny golden hen with bright ruby-encrusted eyes. Inside the hen, there was yet another surprise, a miniature imperial crown and a tiny ruby pendant. Sadly, these inner elements were lost after the revolution, but the egg itself has preserved its magic. Why was an egg chosen as the form for such a precious gift? The answer lies in the symbolism of the holiday itself. In Orthodox tradition, Easter is the celebration of Christ's resurrection, of life's triumph over death. From ancient times, the egg has been a symbol of new life, hope, and renewal. The choice of form was perfect. It united profound religious symbolism with the personal story of the imperial couple, their own love, reborn from loss and sorrow. Maria Feodorovna's reaction exceeded all expectations. She was enchanted not only by the beauty of the creation, but also by the hidden surprises inside, almost like secret messages. Her delight was so great that Alexander III immediately ordered this Easter tradition to be continued every year. Each Easter, Carl Fabergé was to create a new egg, unique and unlike any that had come before, each with its own secret hidden within. Thus, from one deeply personal gesture, a whole ritual was born, a tradition that, over time, became an art form in itself. Each new egg told its own story, about love, about power, about the events that shaped the Romanovs' lives and the history of the empire. Each one became a tiny capsule of memory, precious treasures that held within them the joys and tragedies of an entire empire. But that was only the beginning. Ahead, magnificent masterpieces, each deserving a story of its own. Have you ever heard of an entire warship fitting inside an Easter egg? Sounds incredible, doesn't it? But that's exactly the extraordinary surprise Emperor Alexander III prepared for his wife, Maria Feodorovna, for Easter in 1891. This egg was given a proud and beautiful name, Memory of Azov. Imperial eggs were always filled with deep meaning, but this one became especially memorable. Why? Because it immortalized the journey of the heir to the throne, Nicholas and his younger brother George, to the east, a voyage that lasted nearly 10 months. The brothers sailed on a new cruiser of the Russian fleet named Memory of Azov, honoring the legendary ship celebrated at the Battle of Navarino. The journey passed through exotic lands, India, China, and Japan, and back across the vast expanses of Siberia. Just imagine the scale of such a journey at the end of the 19th century. But let's return to the egg itself. Carved from a single piece of heliotrope, it seemed to conceal the mystery of the deep seas. The dark green stone with reddish flecks truly resembles the ocean's depths, where something hidden and slightly ominous lies. On the outside, it was richly decorated with golden Rococo-style patterns, and the clasp was adorned with a shining ruby and diamonds. But once you open the egg, it takes your breath away. Inside hides a miniature model of the cruiser Memory of Azov. Imagine, Fabergé's craftsmen managed to reproduce it down to the tiniest details. Golden anchors on delicate chains, platinum lifeboats, and windows sparkling with diamonds. The ship appears to sail across an aquamarine plate, imitating the clear seawater. A true marvel, isn't it? However, this egg is linked not only to the romance of travels, but also to dramatic events. Imagine, during a visit to the Japanese city of Otsu, the heir Nicholas narrowly escaped death at the hands of a fanatic samurai, receiving a sword blow to the head. Fortunately, he survived, but this assassination attempt was later seen by many as a fatal sign, a harbinger of the difficult destiny awaiting the future emperor. Knowing about this event, many began to view the egg differently. The red specks in the heliotrope and the bright red ruby on the clasp suddenly seemed to symbolize that bloody attack. Mysticism or mere coincidence? One way or another, the Memory of Azov egg is not only a masterpiece of jewelry art, but also a true monument to one of the most dramatic and captivating episodes of Russian history at the end of the 19th century. Today, it can be seen at the Armory Chamber of the Moscow Kremlin, one of the few Fabergé eggs that have never left Russia. 10 years after the first egg, the tradition had turned into a true family legend. Imagine, every Easter the Empress waited with excitement, wondering what surprise would await her this time. The eggs became increasingly intricate, more luxurious, yet they never lost their special tenderness and meaning. Among all these magnificent masterpieces, there is one egg that holds a special, I would even say touching, place. It is the Renaissance egg, created in 1894. Why this one? Because it was the last Easter gift Emperor Alexander III gave to his beloved wife, Maria Feodorovna. No one, of course, knew then that the emperor would pass away later that same year. What had been intended as an ordinary festive surprise suddenly became a symbol of farewell, eternity, and the hope for their love's immortality. For this gift, Fabergé chose an unusual style, Italian Renaissance. Imagine the finest, almost translucent, milky-colored agate glowing softly from within. The egg was adorned with golden lion heads and multicolored enamel, in the spirit of the great masters of the Renaissance. And the most poignant detail, the date 1894, carefully laid out in diamonds right at the top. Was it mere coincidence? Or did Alexander somehow feel that this egg would become his farewell? And you know what's the most intriguing part? To this day, no one knows for sure what was hidden inside. Each year, the Empress received a secret surprise, carefully concealed within the egg. It is believed that it might have been a miniature resurrection scene, a symbol of eternal life and rebirth, especially meaningful in the year of the emperor's departure. Another version suggests it could have contained a pearl pendant or even a tiny diadem, but no exact information has survived. Yet, no matter how heavy the burden of loss, life continued. After the death of Alexander III, young Nicholas ascended the throne, and along with the crown, he inherited not only the responsibility for an empire, but also the tender family traditions that meant so much to his mother, Maria Feodorovna. From then on, each Easter, he would commission 2 eggs from Fabergé, one for his widowed mother and one for his beloved wife, the young Empress Alexandra Feodorovna. If the Renaissance egg symbolized a departing era, a farewell and memories of the past, then the rosebud egg marked an entirely new chapter in the imperial family's story. The first Easter Nicholas II celebrated with his wife, Alexandra Feodorovna. It was 1895. Nicholas had recently ascended the throne and had just married Princess Alix of Hesse, who, after converting to Orthodoxy, became Empress Alexandra. Despite the somber circumstances of their wedding, overshadowed by the death of Nicholas's father, the young couple was truly happy. The new emperor, finally married to the girl he had loved since his youth, wanted to give her something especially beautiful and meaningful for her first Easter in Russia. Fabergé's craftsmen created for Alexandra an egg perfectly suited for such a romantic purpose. The rosebud was crafted in a refined style of French neoclassicism, a style particularly beloved by the young couple. Its surface was covered with bright strawberry red translucent enamel, over which delicate golden garlands intertwined with ribbons, Cupid's diamond-studded arrows, and leafy wreaths of greenish gold were gracefully laid, all symbols of tender love and the strength of marital bonds. At the top of the egg, beneath a large flat diamond, the artists hid a miniature portrait of Nicholas, carefully painted in watercolor on a thin ivory plaque. Beneath a similar precious stone at the bottom was inscribed the date, 1895, marking Alexandra's first Easter as empress. But as always, the most astonishing part was hidden inside. The egg's surprise was a delicate golden bud of a tea rose, a flower particularly treasured in Alexandra's homeland of Hesse-Darmstadt. The most marvelous detail was that the petals of this tiny jeweled wonder could open with the press of a small button on the stem, revealing inside, among the golden petals, a miniature imperial crown encrusted with diamonds and rubies. Over time, the crown was sadly lost, but even without it, the rose continues to inspire awe. This first Easter gift marked the beginning of a long line of masterpieces Fabergé would create for Alexandra Feodorovna. Unlike the eggs made for Nicholas's mother, each of these gifts carried a deeply personal story of the young couple, reflecting the feelings and hopes they placed in their shared future. Looking at the rosebud, you can't help but wonder, could Nicholas have imagined then just how difficult their shared path would be? But for now, everything was just beginning, with shy hopes, springtime joy, and tenderness also touchingly captured in this first Easter gift. The story of the imperial Fabergé eggs was quickly gaining momentum. Each year, the jewelers not only had to surprise but also outdo themselves, and just 3 years later, in 1898, appeared an egg that is still considered one of the most delicate and poetic masterpieces of the entire collection. I am talking about the famous Lilies of the Valley egg. Why lilies of the valley? This gentle spring flower was one of Alexandra Feodorovna's favorites. In Russia, it symbolized purity, youth, and new life, themes especially dear to the young empress during those years. The arrival of children, the happiness of family life, all of this was reflected not only in official portraits, but also in such personal, intimate gifts. The egg itself was crafted in the Art Nouveau style, the fashionable trend sweeping the world at the end of the 19th century. Fabergé and his craftsmen captured the spirit of the time with remarkable sensitivity. Imagine delicate pink enamel applied over a guilloche-engraved background, so finely done it seems light is flowing from within. Stems of lilies of the valley made of green enamel climb gracefully up the surface of the egg, and tiny pearl buds sparkle like drops of morning dew on fresh grass. What was the surprise hidden inside this time? To be precise, the surprise wasn't hidden inside. It was concealed at the top. A press of the pearl button and a 3-leaf clover frame would emerge from the egg's crown, each leaf bearing a miniature portrait, Nicholas II, and their 2 eldest daughters, Olga and Tatiana. Can you imagine the excitement Alexandra must have felt as she revealed this delicate surprise? A tiny clover, the symbol of luck and family happiness, and the beloved faces, all captured in one exquisite gesture of love. There is something especially touching about this egg. It does not shout about luxury. It doesn't dazzle with an overload of precious stones like many other imperial gifts. Instead, the Lilies of the Valley egg tells a quiet, almost homely story about young parents, about the first steps of their children, about faith in a happy future. And perhaps it is this sincerity that continues to captivate hearts even today. But ahead of us lies the story of an even more dazzling masterpiece, one of the most famous of all Fabergé eggs, a symbol of coronation, power, and unimaginable wealth. It is time to meet the imperial coronation egg. After the tenderness of the Lilies of the Valley egg, it seemed impossible to create something even more impressive. But tradition demanded it. Each year, expectations grew higher, and in 1897, Fabergé unveiled an egg that would go down in history as one of the greatest symbols of imperial splendor, the imperial coronation egg. Imagine, the entire country held its breath in anticipation of the new Tsar's coronation. Nicholas II and Alexandra Feodorovna were preparing for one of the most important days of their lives. And to mark this event, Fabergé's craftsmen created not just an egg, but a true hymn to luxury, triumph, and ancient tradition. The egg is dazzling, its surface covered in transparent yellow enamel laid over a stunning gouache background that seems to capture and freeze the golden light of the coronation day. Across the body of the egg are black double-headed eagles, symbols of the Russian Empire, and beneath the crowns adorning them, Alexandra Feodorovna's diamond monograms. And of course, as with any true Fabergé masterpiece, a surprise awaited inside. But what a surprise! A tiny replica of the coronation carriage, the very same magnificent golden coach that Alexandra rode into Moscow on her coronation day. And it was not just a figurine. The tiny carriage was crafted with astonishing detail. Working doors, miniature suspension systems, gears, the tiniest embellishments, all created on a model no more than 9 centimeters long. Looking at it, you can't help but wonder, how did the craftsmen manage to create something so intricate and perfect on such a tiny scale? It's not just a souvenir. It's a real working machine in miniature, so precise that it seems if you just blew gently, the carriage would start to move. The coronation egg is more than just a symbol of power. It is a mirror of its era, its beauty, its hopes, and its inevitable tragedies. But the story doesn't end here. Ahead lies another stunning masterpiece, one that captured a dream of a grand road uniting the vast lands of the empire. What surprise do you think the Trans-Siberian Express egg held inside? Let's find out together. After the coronation, the imperial family looked to the future with hope. They faced a monumental task to strengthen the empire, to connect its vast territories, to breathe new life into its distant corners. And the symbol of these dreams became the next great creation of Fabergé, the Trans-Siberian Express egg. At first glance, it might seem more restrained compared to the dazzling coronation egg. But behind this modest appearance lay a true story of imperial ambition. Easter, 1900. Nicholas II commissioned an egg from Fabergé, dedicated to one of the greatest projects of his reign, the construction of the Trans-Siberian Railway. This railway was meant to link Moscow to Vladivostok, stretching over 9,000 kilometers across plains, forests, steppes, and mountains. The project seemed almost impossible, but within it lay the vision of Russia's future. The Trans-Siberian egg became a true anthem to this dream. Its body was covered in shimmering green guilloche enamel, reflecting the endless shades of the Siberian taiga. A silver line traced across the surface, marking the route of the railway from west to east across the entire empire. Atop the egg sat the imperial emblem, a double-headed eagle crowned with the imperial crown. Inside the egg was hidden a miniature model of a real train, a locomotive and 5 carriages all linked together. And it wasn't just a figurine. The train could actually move with the help of a tiny mechanical mechanism. The working wheels, the intricate craftsmanship of each tiny car, all of it reproduced with astonishing accuracy. Today, it's hard to imagine the impression this egg must have made at the time. It was not merely a precious gift. It was a message of faith in development, in growth, in inevitable progress. But as we now know, dreams of a great future were already overshadowed by coming storms. Russia, at the dawn of the 20th century, stood on the threshold of great trials. And in this context, the Trans-Siberian egg sounds especially poignant, like a final, innocent hymn to hope for a better tomorrow. Still, another marvel lies ahead. Tell me, can you imagine a bird suddenly singing from amidst jade leaves? Stay with me. The next story about the bay tree egg is sure to amaze you. After the grandeur of the Trans-Siberian Express, it seemed almost impossible to surprise the imperial family again. But Fabergé once more outdid himself. In 1911, for the 30th anniversary of Maria Feodorovna's ascension as empress, Nicholas II commissioned a special Easter egg, the bay tree egg. And it wasn't just a beautiful object, it was a true celebration of craftsmanship, technical ingenuity, and hidden symbolism. Visually, the egg looked nothing like the traditional forms. Before the viewer stood a miniature tree in an elegant planter, trunk, leaves, and fruits, all crafted from the finest plates of nephrite, sparkling citrines, amethysts, and rubies. The leaves shimmered with soft green shades, as if fluttering in a light breeze, and the golden base with its graceful scrolls only enhanced the natural delicacy of the composition. But of course, the real magic was hidden inside. A nearly invisible button, concealed among the carved leaves, activated a sophisticated mechanism. Press it, and from the crown of the tree, a tiny mechanical nightingale would slowly emerge. It would begin to sing, moving its wings and beak. Imagine the moment. Among the precious branches, a golden bird suddenly comes to life, filling the air with a delicate, poignant melody. Interestingly, for a long time, it was believed that the tree depicted an orange tree. Only much later did researchers discover that it was, in fact, a bay tree, the ancient symbol of victory, glory, and immortality. And isn't that symbolic? To gift Maria Feodorovna a bay tree on her jubilee, silently saying, "Your name will be remembered forever." But not all Easter eggs were so ceremonial and poetic. Sometimes circumstances dictated a completely different language, the language of strict lines, muted colors, and profound inner strength. How did Fabergé's creations change during World War I? And which egg became a silent symbol of the final tragic act of a great empire? Ahead lies the story of the Order of St. George Egg, and believe me, this story will touch even the most steadfast hearts. Easter, 1916. Russia was in dire straits. The second year of the First World War was underway, and in this new reality, luxury and splendor had faded into the background. Yet the tradition of Easter eggs for the imperial family remained alive, a quiet thread connecting the past to the present, a sign of loyalty and memory during the most difficult times. It was then that one of Fabergé's most restrained and, perhaps, most moving creations appeared, the Order of St. George Egg. At first glance, it seems almost modest compared to earlier masterpieces. No bursts of enamel, no intricate miniature mechanisms. White enamel, light and soft as a veil of mist, and the austere crosses of the Order of St. George placed around the body of the egg, like beacons of valor and courage. But within this outward simplicity lay the full force of the time. The Order of St. George was the highest military award of the Russian Empire, and Nicholas II himself had been honored with it for personal bravery at the front. During these years, the emperor tried to stay close to his troops, to inspire them by personal example. And the egg, created for his mother, Maria Feodorovna, became both a tribute to her son and a reminder of the trials through which Russia was passing. And now, the moment of unveiling. At the center of the egg, behind tiny doors, were hidden portraits of Nicholas II and his son, young Tsarevich Alexei. 2 generations of the dynasty, held in the very heart of the white egg, surrounded by the military symbol of valor. And could anything have been more poignant in 1916, when millions were dying at the fronts and the monarchy, though still standing, was already beginning to crack? Looking at this egg today, you feel especially sharply how the world was changing around the Romanov family. Somewhere, palaces still glittered, parades still marched, glasses still clinked at grand balls. But outside those walls, the storm was already rising, ready to sweep everything away. The Order of St. George egg is like the last gleam of the old world. It does not shout about past splendor. It speaks quietly of loyalty, pain, duty, and love, in words that can only be heard by the heart. But the story of the Fabergé eggs did not end with the fall of the empire. When the revolution broke out, the precious masterpieces, created in the quiet of workshops for the joy of the imperial family, were scattered across the world. Some ended up in museums, others in private collections overseas. It seemed that their story, like the world they belonged to, was lost forever. And yet, miracles do happen. Decades passed, eras changed, and many of these treasures found their way back home. Today, in St. Petersburg, in the halls of the Shuvalov Palace, they once again shine under the vaulted ceilings of the magnificent Fabergé Museum, and everyone who sees them understands, true beauty endures everything, even time itself. One day, I was lucky enough to visit the very place where many of Fabergé's surviving masterpieces are now kept, the Fabergé Museum in St. Petersburg. And that encounter changed not only my perception of these amazing eggs, but of jewelry art itself. You can look endlessly at photographs of royal jewelry, admire the finest videos, but no camera, not even the most professional, can convey even a tenth of the magic you experience when standing before the original. The light refracting through the enamel and gemstones seems to bring the surface to life. Every line, every detail breathes with the warmth of the master's hand. Only by seeing Fabergé's eggs with your own eyes can you truly understand why these tiny creations have outlived empires and remained living symbols of great art. Only then do you become a true admirer for life. If you ever have the chance to see Fabergé's eggs with your own eyes, seize it. And not just in St. Petersburg. Sometimes the Fabergé Museum's collections, as well as private collections, travel for exhibitions to other cities and countries. Such exhibitions have been held in London, New York, Paris, Abu Dhabi. Each of them becomes a global event because thousands of people long to touch such perfection. And you know, when you stand before these tiny treasures, it suddenly becomes clear. True art is beyond the grasp of time. It shines on, through centuries, through fates, through all of history, like light through the delicate enamel of a Fabergé egg. Thank you for watching this video to the end. I would love for you to share your impressions in the comments. Which story from today touched you the most? Would you like to see a continuation featuring other Fabergé eggs? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. There are many more amazing tales of royal jewels ahead. And may your heart always have a place for beauty, which, like the light in Fabergé's enamel, never fades. Until we meet again, and may each day bring you its own little wonders.